unacceptable. And it's unacceptable because it doesn't work, but also because people don't accept it. But in Iraq, it failed miserably. I mean, I hear people you know, on Fox or in some of the AM radio shows talking about Al-Qaeda, you know, now there's, you know, what are you talking about? There's no Al-Qaeda in Egypt right now at all. There never was, actually. But you know where there's Al-Qaeda? In Iraq, the democracy that we supposedly exported. You know, and we take pictures of the women in the veils with the purple thumbs. Yay, we voted, and now it's a democracy. It's all over Time magazine, all over New York Times. This is a democracy. What we're seeing now, this is how you birth a democracy, when it comes from within. And what was our response? Denial. I'm saying our response as a government. Denial, confusion, worry, apprehension, hesitation. It was embarrassing for me as an American to see Obama and Clinton and Biden talk about the Egyptian revolution. They didn't know their heads from their ass, excuse my language. I mean, they were confused. And Clinton, I think, said, Egypt is stable. No, it wasn't. And Biden said, Mubarak is not a dictator, he's a friend. Well, actually, he's a friend, but he's a dictator. And that's a problem. And Obama, you know, again, just generic, nice language that went nowhere. Now, later they changed, but guess who made them change? The facts on the ground, the people, the same people that forced Mubarak out, forced the United States to change its rhetoric. The people had the final say. I would have liked for that to be our policy from the beginning. I believe that our foreign policy is short-sighted when it becomes reductionist, when it becomes minimalist, when it becomes focused on three fulcrums. One, if you provide oil or facilitate oil for the United States in the Middle East, you are an ally. Two, if you prevent the growth of the perceived Islamist threat successfully, therefore you are an ally. Three, if you're at peace with Israel, or if you are perceived not to threaten what we say is the interest of Israel, then you're an ally. Mubarak had all three. Who cares if he didn't have 4, 5, and 6, including if 4, 5, and 6 was, is he a dictator or somebody who is benevolent to his people? Was he just or not? Did he kill his people or not? You know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet we give lip service to democracy. We give lip service to that being our ideal, and that's what we want the world to have. And the people see that. The people see the hypocrisy, and they loathe it, and they disrespect us for it. They don't hate us for our freedom. They loathe our hypocrisy, which is apparent to them. And it's apparent to us. I mean, it's not like it's not apparent to us, and we criticize it back home. So I hope that our foreign policy can become more sophisticated. It can truly be centered around our values. Again, I go back to values. We have great American values. This country achieves greatness not through chance. We had great values, and we still do. They're being challenged. We have to reclaim those values. We have to believe that it is in our best interest to support democracy and freedom for the people of the world. That it is in our best interest. It's not a sacrifice, it's not a compromise. And that to play around with this geopolitical strong arm, the military is the only way we know how to, you know, deal with the Middle East, or the carrot and the stick. It's not disgraceful to them, it's disgraceful to us.
2 questions. I have a question about the new Prime Minister. As you mentioned, he's a Purdue grad. Is he well respected in Egypt? Is he well respected in Egypt? And how did he end up as a Prime Minister in these tumultuous times? And will he last?
Well, he's pretty well respected, especially after they found out that he was a Purdue alumni. Alumnus. But no, actually, and that, by the way, was a great coincidence. After Ahmed invited me the next day, I hear that a Purdue alumnus became the Prime Minister. I was like, wow. Either I'm a really good omen or he is. He is well respected. He's a man that is considered anti-corruption. He was the will of the people. The same people in Tahrir Square who demanded that the previous cabinet be dropped, including the previous Prime Minister Ahmed Shafi, demanded, or through their proxy, suggested the name of Dr. Assam Sharaf. He had been in Tahrir protesting with the people. He was part of a previous cabinet a few years ago, but he resigned because of the corruption. So he's a man that can be trusted, I think. I don't know about he doesn't strike me as incredibly charismatic. Don't tell him that if he ever comes to speak here. But I don't know if that's necessary for a prime minister. Maybe that's more of a presidential thing. But definitely he seems like he's got his act together. He's a bright man, he's accomplished. And most importantly, he's anti-corruption and is pro-transparency and accountability. So it was a good move. And he changed a lot of the ministers that were problem ministers, and that was a great move as well.
Boiler up. Last question. Yeah, one last question.
Yes, sir. I know that unemployment in Egypt, particularly among those under 30, was particularly high at the time of the revolution. Are you concerned, and is there a concern that as things move forward and people kind of return to their jobs, that a lot of these revolutionaries do not have jobs to return to?
Yes, and more importantly, they're concerned. And more importantly, they know they need to do something about it. The awareness is there, and that's really important. What I really liked seeing, and it sounds patronizing, who am I to judge? But if I can talk about a personal opinion, was that I felt that everybody, people in the streets really had the sophistication to distinguish between toppling a regime and building a democracy in its place. Toppling a regime is a great feat, but the moment it happened, everybody said, we've accomplished the easy part. The tough part, the hard part, is to build a democracy, and that's what we're engaging in now. So we have to create jobs. We have to start talking about economic reform and economic reform policies, education, commerce, all of these things, and we're seeing these movements, not just in Egypt, but even here amongst the Egyptian American community, develop with ideas, and again, it's like almost like focus groups. It's the most interesting rebuilding of a country I've witnessed in a long time, where really just people are gathering together and creating these spontaneous cells and focus groups, and they can get a meeting with the private. It becomes so easy to talk to the people in power, the complete opposite of how it was before. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but I think one that at least is being discussed, if not met. It could take a while. It's not going to be anytime soon.
One more question.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that stories with us. Actually, the first time that Egypt grabbed the attention of me was the January the 1st when there was a suicide bombing in front of the church. And I quickly see that tension arising again between different religions, different people group. Do you think, I guess particularly I'm talking about tension between Christians and Muslims. I heard you describing the unity between those two groups. Where do you see that going?
I think the unity will prevail. There are challenges, and there are anecdotal stories that are coming in the media right now. They have their context. As I talk to the people back home, for example, some of the violence that we saw yesterday, it was a story between a Muslim and a Christian family that had an old feud, and they escalated it, and they believe there are agent provocateurs that wanted to sort of, like somebody said, there's going to be attempts to set back the revolution. How are they going to do that? By playing the old hand of turning groups against each other. Now, what's more important or more relevant is that a lot of well-respected people came on television, wrote in the paper, talked to people in the streets and said, guys, let's not go back, let's not regress, let's be smarter than that. So, including Coptic or Christian leadership. They were there saying, telling the youth, the Christian youth that were rioting, go back home, don't take the bait. And Muslim clerics who were doing the same. So you're going to read these stories. It's not going to happen. It's not going to, again, in France it was the reign of terror. Read about it. It was like the 3 craziest years in the history of France. It followed the revolution, but democracy was there to stay. We're not going to reach that point, or even close to it, but there will be challenges. They shouldn't shock us, and we shouldn't lose sight of the larger picture.
Well, I want to just again, on behalf of the Egyptian Student Association, thank everyone for coming tonight, and I want you to please join me in a final round of applause for Mr. Ahmed Rehab.